Welcome to Macmillan 180. For nearly the past 25 years, students and faculty of the University of British Columbia's Animal Welfare Program have gathered here to share ideas, learn, and enjoy lunch. To celebrate our 25th anniversary, the Animal Welfare Program hosted a series of webinars to virtually invite our diverse alumni to join us once again around the table to ruminate in Room 180. My name is Megan Locke, and I work with the Animal Welfare Program. I will be the host of today's podcast. On December 5th, we were joined by Ruan, Katia, and Pilar to discuss how to achieve change for animals in Latin America. Ruan Deros obtained a bachelor's in agronomy in 2012, a master's in agroecosystems in 2014, and a PhD at the Animal Welfare Program in 2019. He is currently a professor at the Pontifical Catholic University of Paraná in Brazil. His research areas include applied ethology, sustainability, wildlife and companion animal welfare, and veterinary epidemiology. Katia Atoji Henrique is a veterinarian based in Brazil, and she has worked as a professor at the Federal University of Technology, also in Paraná, since 2011. From 2020 to 2021, she was a visiting professor at the Animal Welfare Program. Katia's research focuses on horse welfare, especially concerning the well-being of working horses and horses in rodeos. Pilar Sepulveda Vera spent around half of her time in the Animal Welfare Program during her DVM at the Austral University of Chile, and worked on improving the identification of sick cows before clinical signs of disease. She currently teaches dairy herd health and welfare to veterinary students as an assistant professor at the same university and is a member of the Animal Welfare Program there. Over the past 25 years, we have welcomed 221 visiting scholars from all around the world. We have hosted many exchange students through the Emerging Leaders in the Americas, MITACs, CAPES, and Science Without Borders programs, and we have established a relationship with the Federal University of Santa Catarina in southern Brazil. When asked about a lesson learned from the AWP, Pilar talked about how her time on the dairy farm and how it taught her how to work with others, which she applies to her current work.
Maybe for me was to learn how to work with others. During my time at the dairy farm in Agassiz and then at UBC, I always felt I was working as a part of a group. And I think that is not always present in other programs. I learned how to listen to others, make my own suggestions to a group, and to find compromises. And I also learned that it's important to celebrate all the success along the way, the big ones, the small ones. And now as a professor, I think that one of my biggest challenges is having to motivate my students. And in my experience, making them feel as a part of a group, it's super important. And I think that is one lesson that I learned from the Animal Welfare Program.
Many of our visiting researchers join us from animal science or veterinary science departments. All of our speakers talked about the challenges, but also successes that arise when they conduct and disseminate animal welfare research at their home universities.
I think the challenge that I've been facing now here is exactly trying to make people work as a group. As Pilar said, how can I motivate the students and even my colleagues in trying to discuss animal welfare? I teach in an animal science program. They think differently than veterinarians. So it's mostly about production and profit. This has been a big challenge for me. About successes, I talked to a former student and she was telling me how they are trying to move to the free-range laying hens. So she's seeing some kind of change of mind, like that we need to take care of the welfare of these animals. So I think this is a little success that I can see. Some of my students really worried about working with animal welfare and looking at welfare as in a different perspective.
Scientific research concerning the livestock industry here in Latin America, here in Chile, faces new challenges arising from the need to move toward more sustainable production systems. And also, this is new in Chile, consumer attitudes toward farm animal welfare is changing. So I think that's a big challenge that we need to address. about success here in the vet school, we have the inclusion of the animal welfare course. I think the most important is to motivate them to learn about animal welfare as part of our work as a vet. So I think it's not for me personally, but I think as for our vet school, is a success.
Just to build on what Katia and Pilar said, on the difficulty that we have with not only the students, Katia, but it will add into the industry. They're still a little bit stubborn to openly talk about animal welfare. From my side, with the students, it's actually been quite nice because I'm in a big city here in Paraná State. So most of my students are urban and they do care. But we still have like a third of them that would have this more like mentality of, oh, animals are here to serve us. But most of the students, they are very proactive on the sense of like trying to get the animals a better life. On the other hand, here in Brazil, there's something that is happening today. So we are transitioning governments here. So they had a meeting just to talk about how the animals are going to be built into the policies that they are planning for the next government. But there are just few animal welfare scientists there. There's a huge pressure from society to change how, especially the legislation and all the policies in Brazil are going to be shaped. So I don't know how that's going to turn out, but it's just something interesting to keep an eye on.
Challenges to improve animal welfare vary around the world. Katia and Ruan discuss the difficulty of striking a balance between production and animal welfare when working with farmed animals.
I'd like to add what Ruan said. I teach in a rural area, so it's kind of the opposite. Like I have most of my students are in the livestock production systems. Their families are working with that. So when you say like, oh, you have to improve the welfare, they always question how much it's going to cost. I've been thinking exactly that. What can we do to kind of balance these things? I try to bring some information about the economical aspect, but I think in Brazil, we have some major differences in economic status. Like we have too many people under the poverty rate. So it's not that they're not worried about it. It's just because they have to take care of themselves first. Me and Ruan, we are in the south region of Brazil. I think it's around 5%. But if you see the northern and the northeast, it's a huge part of the population that is under the poverty rate. So it's difficult to try to get this balance when you have this huge country with so many different economical discrepancies. So it's a challenge. I don't know, maybe Ruan has some ideas so we can work around. And Pilar in Chile, I don't know how it is.
My take on it is that Brazil is a huge country. There's like so many farmers. Yeah, before my master's and in between my master's and my PhD, I worked with small farmers in southern Brazil, dairy farmers, trying to get the industry on board. And that is the main challenge.
The speakers also highlight the importance of animal welfare to students enrolled in programs at their home universities. Even beyond farmed animals, all of the speakers recognize that the welfare for a variety of animals is becoming more prevalent in the minds of undergraduates.
In the vet school, I think now we have a lot of concern on small animals. And maybe it's because we have a lot of students that begin the vet school with that in mind. So I think for me, in my generation, was more farm animals, but now I think it's more moving to dogs, cats, and pets in general.
It really depends on the background of the student. You're going to have people from the countryside worrying about all the animal welfare problems that are related to production. And then you get the people that are more urban or interested in small and wildlife. One of the things that surprised me is how impactful was the campaign of like the Ralph the rabbit. I think it was PETA or Mercy for Animals that did a short video on the lab animal welfare for the testing of cosmetics and things like that. And then in Brazil, it has been huge and all the students talk about it. So in that sense, it's surprising, I would say, because vet students, especially in the first, second year, they're not exposed to lab animals yet.
I was talking to my students today and we were talking about wild animals. And I was surprised it was a biochemistry class, so it doesn't have any relation with that. But I always bring this kind of subject. So I think they are concerned overall about the animals. I think because they are in the first year, so they come with different backgrounds, as Ruan said. Most of them come from the countryside, the rural area. But it was interesting when I bring this subject, swine is the first always. And then they talk about poultry, not much for dairy and beef cattle. So I don't know if they have this close contact with dairy, they don't see as many welfare problems because they work with that. And I try to bring something about the horses, but no one thinks that they have any problems with their welfare. I brought this up about the fish welfare, but the main concern of them are really swine, I think.
Forming connections with international scholars is imperative because animal welfare issues have global implications. Ruan talked about how the impact of global trade and the ripple effect on societal views has expanded the scope of who becomes involved in animal welfare discussions.
This concern of the industry and the trading, I think it was a little bit harder 5 years ago. Now, with the shifting in trading that we are seeing in Brazil, I'm a little bit concerned with that. Because as we shift from selling to Europe and the US and starting selling more and more and more to China, so China was always our second biggest buyer, and now it's become the first. That is changing a little bit because we know that China doesn't have strict policies on animal welfare, but that is something that we keep an eye on. But I agree with you, the people here in Brazil, they have a concept of animal welfare that resonates very similarly to what you have in North America and also in Europe. But now with the trading shifting a little bit, I'm not so sure that that's going to happen that soon. I think it's our job to inform and try to engage in these conversations with the industry and also with the government. Now, hopefully, the government will be a little bit more open. So that's how I think that we can contribute and showing them that on the longer run, having the animal welfare always on site is something that's going to be better for our industry. But that might take a little bit longer than we would hope.
In discussing all of the different people that are involved in managing the welfare of animals, the speakers talked about one welfare. The concept that the well-being of humans, animals, and the environment are all interconnected. Katia talked about how learning about one welfare during her time in the AWP was impactful to her.
We can think about the welfare of animals without thinking about the well-being of humans. And this talks a lot about the one welfare perspective. So with my colleagues, when we have a dissertation that they have to present to us by the end of their undergrad, I had one defense that she was talking about this one welfare perspective. It was new for my colleague. And so I think this is something that I learned in the AWP, and I think I can bring here, as Ruan said, and try to spread more this kind of idea so it can move forward.
Pilar also noted that one welfare opportunities come up in her own work, particularly with smaller dairy farmers in Chile.
For us in development countries, the one welfare concept, it makes sense for us. And here we have a lot of population in the line with poverty. So, for example, the dairy sector, I work with small dairy farmers. So we have to try to balance, right? It's important the welfare of the people who work with animals as the welfare of the animals. So I completely agree.
In the next 25 years, the AWP's links to universities worldwide will prove to be vital in the ongoing effort to solve these complex local and global issues. Ruan discussed the importance of our relationship with Latin America for the future of animal welfare.
I guess that's on the roadmap for AWP, which is continuing to collaborating with us now and other researchers around the globe, and just to keep the dialogue going. So if you have opportunities to have people to do more of this partnership with other countries, collect data somewhere, but also have the students there and to try to do that, I think that will be a great way of training the students on their own country, but also being able to connect with not only the student, but also the universities over there. So I think that outreach is super important, and I guess that's one of the ways that the AWP can contribute with that, besides that, is just, participating on all the academic talks and all the outreaching that you already do.
Thank you for listening to our December podcast on achieving change for animals in Latin America. You can find the Animal Welfare Program on our website at www.awp.landfood.ubc.ca and on our Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter social media channels. Join us next time for an episode on achieving change in the private sector.